I'm Emily Rhodes, 38 years old, a nurse practitioner who spent most of her life fixing other people's emergencies until my own family became one. For 10 years, I've poured every spare hour, every saved dollar into this small craftsman house in Portland's Sellwood district. The cedar porch, the pale blue shutters, the garden I coaxed back from weeds, they're not just details. They're proof that I built something stable in a world that never handed me much. So when my parents called saying they wanted to drop by for dinner, I thought maybe finally we were reconnecting. I roasted chicken, lit candles, even baked my mother's favorite cornbread. But when they arrived with my brother Daniel, his wife Melissa, and their two kids trailing behind, something in my gut tightened. The air felt deliberate. We sat around the table. Conversations started polite, work, the kids, weather, until my father cleared his throat the way he does before saying something heavy. He folded his hands and said, "Your brother and his family need this house more than you do." At first I laughed, thinking it was a bad joke, but then I saw the look on Melissa's face. Calm, rehearsed. And Daniel just sat there, eyes down, letting them speak for him. My mom added softly, "It's just for a while, sweetie, until they get back on their feet. You're doing fine." My fork froze mid-air. Doing fine. That phrase again. The one they've used my whole life to justify giving everything to someone else. "Dad," I said carefully, "this is my house. I bought it. I paid for every nail, every brick." He nodded. "We know, honey, but Daniel's family needs space. You're alone." The word alone stung, like my independence was something to be ashamed of. She smiled, the kind of smile people use when they already think they've won. "The school district here is great. The kids would love the backyard." I looked down at the tablecloth I'd ironed that morning. My hands were trembling. If you've ever had your own family tell you your hard work didn't matter, that what's yours should belong to someone else, you know that mix of shock and disbelief that turns your stomach. Have you ever been there? If you have, share your story in the comments, because people need to hear how that feels. And if you've ever had to stand up for something that was rightfully yours, hit that subscribe button, because you'll understand exactly what came next. I tried to stay calm. "You want me to give them my house?" Dad shrugged. "Family helps family." Family. The same word that was supposed to mean love, support, safety, suddenly sounded like a threat. Melissa reached for her coffee, looking around the room like she was already measuring where to put her furniture. Daniel's kids were chasing each other through the hallway, their shoes thudding against my hardwood floors. No one stopped them. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Years of holding back had taught me silence was safer. Still, something in me shifted that night. After they left, I stood in the living room, the scent of cornbread still in the air, and stared at the space they just claimed as theirs. My father's words echoed in my head, "You're alone." But they didn't know everything. Not yet. Because a week before that dinner, I'd discovered something about Daniel, a small folder of refinance papers he'd left at Mom and Dad's house, his signature beside mine, forged. He'd already tried once to take what wasn't his, and if they thought I was going to hand over my life's work again, they were about to find out who I'd become. I wasn't always this guarded. There was a time when I thought family meant safety, that if you loved hard enough, people would see it and love you back the same way. But growing up in Eugene, Oregon, taught me otherwise. My parents were both public school teachers, good people in the eyes of everyone else, but stretched thin, always grading papers or juggling bills. When I was a kid, I used to stay up waiting for them to come home, my backpack still open with drawings I wanted to show. Half the time, they'd fall asleep on the couch before I got the chance. Then Daniel was born. I was 8. I remember the day they brought him home, tiny, red-faced, wrapped in a blue blanket. I thought he was perfect. I made him paper crowns, built him blanket forts, fed him applesauce when Mom was too tired. I used to whisper, "You and me, little brother, always." But always faded fast, because Daniel didn't just enter the family, he became the family. Every compliment, every spare dollar, every ounce of attention shifted his way. When he got a B in math, they celebrated with ice cream. When I brought home straight A's, Dad said, "That's what we expect from you, Em." It didn't feel cruel, not at first, just invisible. Like the more capable I became, the less they needed to care. When I turned 13, my grandfather, the one person who really saw me, taught me how to repair old furniture. He said, "When you fix something with your hands, you fix something in yourself, too." He died that same year. After that, I stopped trying to be seen. In high school, I worked weekends at a diner to save for college. Mom said, "You're so independent. We're proud." But when Daniel wrecked Dad's truck at 16, they paid for the repairs and a new car without a word. "He's just young," they said. I wanted to be angry, but I wasn't. I just told myself, if I work hard enough, maybe one day they'll notice. That day never came. While Daniel drifted between community college and business ideas, I got accepted into Oregon Health and Science University in Portland. I took out student loans, worked double shifts, and spent nights studying in hospital hallways. Every milestone, my first license, my first paycheck, I wanted to share with them, but the calls always ended the same. "That's great, Em, but did you hear Daniel's new plan? He's going to start a company." He never did. After I graduated, I moved into a tiny studio apartment in Portland. Peeling wallpaper, leaky pipes, a ceiling that hummed when the wind blew. But it was mine. I painted the walls soft gray, fixed the sink, hung string lights by the window. Each change was a small rebellion, proof that I could build a life without permission. When Daniel got married to Melissa, all charm, perfect smile, and zero filter, my parents threw a backyard wedding. They borrowed money, rented tents, invited everyone from church. I worked the night shift at the hospital, came late, still in scrubs. No one noticed. I gave them a toaster as a gift. They gave Daniel a down payment for his first house. Then, a few years later, I bought my house, the one in Selwood, all by myself. No help, no cosigner. Just years of overtime, skipped vacations, and the quiet thrill of signing my name on the dotted line. Mom didn't even come to see it. Her excuse was, "It's too far to drive." Daniel got a new SUV the same week. She drove 2 hours to pick it up with him. I should have known then I was never going to be the favorite. But I held on anyway, hoping that maybe one day they'd look at me the way they looked at him. That's the cruelest part about being the strong one. People assume you don't need love just because you can survive without it. Sometimes late at night, I'd walk through my house barefoot, hearing the creak of the wooden floor, smelling the rosemary by the window, and I'd think, if Grandma or Grandpa could see me now, they'd be proud. That thought alone kept me warm through every lonely dinner, every missed call, every holiday I spent alone. So when they sat in my dining room that night, demanding I hand over the one thing I built for myself, it wasn't just about the house. It was every forgotten birthday, every "you're fine," every time I was told to be strong while Daniel was rescued. It was all of it crashing down at once. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't invisible anymore. I was angry. The night of that family dinner replayed in my head like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen and saw the mess they'd left behind. Sticky fingerprints on the counter, crayon marks on the fridge, juice stains on the rug I'd imported from a local crafts fair. It wasn't just clutter. It was a message. We've already started taking over. I grabbed a towel, started scrubbing, but my hands were shaking. Every wipe just made the anger climb higher up my chest. How could they? After everything I'd done, every sacrifice, every lonely night, how could my own family walk into my home and treat it like a hand-me-down? A text from Mom popped up. "Hope you're thinking about what we said. It's for the best. Daniel's kids need a backyard." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Then another message, this time from Daniel. "Hey, no hard feelings, sis. We can talk about the move when you're ready." The move. Like it was already happening. I typed out a reply, then deleted it. I didn't trust myself not to explode. That week, I went to work at the clinic, trying to act normal, smiling for patients, listening to their stories, giving advice about blood pressure and medication. But inside, I was a live wire. Every time someone mentioned family, my jaw clenched. I'd listen to my patients talk about daughters who checked in daily or brothers who built decks together, and I'd think, what's that like? By Friday, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Mom. "Can we talk?" I said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. "Of course, honey. We're all family here." We met at their house in Eugene, the same one I grew up in. The smell of coffee and old carpet hit me the second I walked in. Childhood nostalgia collided with bitterness. Dad was in his recliner, reading the paper like always. Daniel and Melissa were already there, sitting side by side on the couch. Melissa smiled, sugar sweet. "Hey, Em, glad you came. We were just talking about school districts." School districts. They were already planning which room would be their kids'. I sat down, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm not giving up my house." Dad lowered his paper, frowned. "No one's asking you to give it up, just to share. Be practical." Practical? I worked for 10 years to pay for that place. Daniel's 36 and hasn't held a steady job since college. Daniel leaned forward. "You think you're better than me because you have a job? I've had bad luck, that's all." Bad luck doesn't last 15 years. It's called choices. The room went silent. Mom looked at me the way she used to when I disappointed her. "Emily, you've always been so harsh. You don't understand what it means to have children. Daniel's doing his best." I laughed, a sound sharper than I intended. His best? He forged my signature last year on refinance papers. I found them. Melissa stiffened. "That's ridiculous." "Is it? Then maybe you can explain why a mortgage company called my work asking for confirmation?" Dad's voice hardened. "Enough! Don't accuse your brother." I looked at him, trembling. "Why not? You've never stopped him before." It felt like something broke then. A dam inside me I'd been patching since I was 8 years old. I stood, pacing. "You told me to be strong, to understand, to give him another chance. You called it love, but it was favoritism. Every single time." Mom tried to reach for my hand. "Emily!" "No," I said. "You don't get to Emily me now." Daniel muttered something. "You're being dramatic." That word, dramatic, was the match. I turned to him, voice shaking but loud. "You walked into my home like you owned it. You let your kids draw on my walls. You had the nerve to talk about where their toys would go in a house you didn't pay a dime for." Melissa whispered something under her breath, but I didn't care. My pulse roared in my ears. Dad stood up. "Enough! We're not enemies here." "Yes, we are," I said quietly. "You just don't want to admit it." I left before they could answer. Drove all the way back to Portland with my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. When I got home, the sun had set.
The house was dark and still, the air heavy with silence. I dropped my keys on the counter and finally let the tears fall. Not weak tears, but the kind that burn, the kind that come from years of being dismissed. This wasn't about jealousy or pride anymore. It was about survival, about not letting them erase me again. And somewhere between anger and heartbreak, a quiet promise formed. They won't win this time.
The drive back from Eugene felt endless. The highway lights blurred through my windshield like ribbons of gold and white, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel angry, just hollow. By the time I reached my neighborhood in Portland, rain had started to fall. Soft and cold, the kind that seeps into your sleeves no matter how fast you run. I parked in front of the house, just staring at it from the car. The porch light glowed faintly, the roses drooping in the garden bed. My house, the one I'd built alone, suddenly looked fragile, like one strong gust could take it all away. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it, but it felt different. Too quiet, too still. I dropped my bag on the floor and sat at the kitchen table, the same table my parents had sat at when they told me to give it all up. Their voices echoed in the back of my mind like a haunting chorus. You're alone. You're strong. You'll be fine. I looked at the wall where Daniel's kids had scribbled with markers, faint red lines I hadn't fully managed to scrub off. They glared back at me, a reminder of how easily people can ruin something beautiful without even noticing. I started cleaning again, like I always did when I didn't know what else to do. Dishes, counters, floors. But the more I cleaned, the dirtier everything felt. It wasn't the house that was stained. It was me. At some point, I realized I hadn't eaten all day. I poured a bowl of cereal, sat by the window, and watched the rain pour down in heavy sheets. The sound was hypnotic. For a moment, I imagined what it would be like to just leave. Sell the house, disappear somewhere quiet, and start over. Maybe that would be easier than fighting a battle no one believed I deserved to win. But then I saw the small details that only I had ever cared about. The framed photo of my graduation, the chipped mug from the clinic, the yellow throw blanket I'd bought after my first big paycheck. Every object was a chapter of my life, written in sweat and long nights. This wasn't just property. It was proof that I existed, that my work meant something. And yet, that night, it felt like all of it could vanish. One signature, one lie, and it could be gone. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel's smug face, Melissa's satisfied smile, and my father's calm authority. Their words crawled through me like static. I tossed and turned until 3 a.m. when I finally gave up and sat by the window again. The street was empty, except for the glow of a single lamppost flickering in the distance. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from my neighbor, Mrs. Carter. "Hey, Emily. Hope you're okay. Daniel stopped by earlier asking about property values around here. Said something about refinancing? Sounded strange." I stared at the screen, the words blurring. He was already moving forward, already treating my home like it was his. Something inside me cracked. I put the phone down, walked into the living room, and sat on the floor. The tears came again, but quieter this time. Not angry, not even desperate, just defeated. How do you keep fighting when it's your own family on the other side? I didn't have the answer. All I knew was that the rain kept falling, and my house, my sanctuary, no longer felt like home. I wrapped myself in the yellow blanket and whispered into the silence, "I can't do this anymore." And for a moment,
I almost believed it.
The morning after that long, sleepless night, I stood at the kitchen sink staring out the window. The rain had stopped, but everything still looked gray, the kind of gray that makes you wonder if the sun's ever coming back. My reflection in the glass looked like a stranger. Tired eyes, messy hair, someone worn down but not broken. Not yet. I poured myself a cup of coffee and took a slow breath. Enough crying. Enough waiting for someone else to make things right. If Daniel could forge my name once, what was stopping him from trying again? And if my parents couldn't see through him now, they never would. I realized that morning that protecting my home meant protecting myself. I grabbed my phone and called the only person I trusted outside of work, Linda Perez, a lawyer I'd met years ago when she came to the clinic after a car accident. We'd stayed in touch, and she'd always said, if you ever need legal advice, don't wait until it's too late. It was time to take her up on that. Emily, she said after I told her everything, this isn't just family drama. This is potential fraud. You need to secure your assets immediately. Secure how? I asked. Transfer the property into a living trust. That way, no one can touch it. Not your brother, not even your parents. You'll still live there, but it'll be legally protected. Her tone was calm, but firm, the way I sounded with my patients when I was telling them how to survive something painful. I can handle that. I have to. Linda connected me with a property specialist named David Hahn, who helped me draft the paperwork. We worked late into the night on video calls, scanning documents, double-checking details. When I signed the final page, a strange calm washed over me, the kind that comes when you finally stop being afraid. For the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. The next day, I woke up with purpose. I put on my work scrubs, tied my hair back, and smiled at myself in the mirror. I looked alive again. At the clinic, between patients, I did a little more digging. I called the mortgage company directly, pretending to verify some old records. What I learned made my stomach drop. Daniel had already inquired about refinancing under my name 2 months earlier. He'd even sent over fake income statements. It wasn't just entitlement anymore. It was a plan. I forwarded the information to Linda, who immediately set up a meeting with a financial investigator she knew. Within a few days, they traced several suspicious accounts tied to Daniel: credit cards, overdue business loans, and a massive personal debt of nearly $60,000. Every page of that report was another nail in the coffin of his lies. But I wasn't interested in revenge. Not yet. I wanted protection, peace. That weekend, I visited Aunt Rachel, my mother's older sister, the one relative who had always been honest with me. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, the smell of cinnamon rolls filling the air. She listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, she sighed, stirring her coffee slowly. You know, when your grandfather passed, he left you both a little inheritance, 20 grand. But your parents gave it all to Daniel. My heart stopped. What? Why? They said you didn't need it, she said softly. You were the responsible one. I felt the air leave my lungs. So this wasn't new. They'd been choosing. When Aunt Rachel told me about the inheritance, something inside me clicked. It wasn't surprise anymore. It was confirmation. My whole life I'd been told to be strong, but strength had turned into an excuse for them to take. That day, sitting across from my aunt, I finally understood. Being strong doesn't mean staying silent. It means standing up. By the next week, the legal trust was finalized. My house was officially transferred into the Rhodes Living Trust, with Linda and David listed as co-trustees. It meant that no one, not Daniel, not my parents, could sell, refinance, or claim ownership without my written consent. The papers were sealed, notarized, untouchable. For the first time, I felt safe.
But safety wasn't enough. I needed to face them. I invited my parents and Daniel to dinner at a small restaurant near downtown Portland. Neutral ground, quiet lighting, no audience but us. When they arrived, I was already seated, files spread neatly across the table. I'd even ordered coffee for everyone, just to keep things civil. Mom smiled nervously. "Emily, it's nice you wanted to talk." Dad nodded, cautious. Daniel leaned back in his chair, confident as ever. "So what's this about? You ready to do the right thing?" I took a slow sip of water, feeling my heartbeat steady. "Actually, yes," I said. "That's why we're here." I slid a folder toward Daniel. Inside were copies of the refinance inquiries, his fake signatures, and the debt report Linda had uncovered. His face went pale. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. "Proof of the fraud you tried to commit under my name. The mortgage company has the same documents. Linda's already filed a report." Dad's brows furrowed. "Emily, you can't be serious." "I am," I said, my tone calm, almost too calm. "And before you accuse me of being dramatic again, I've already spoken with a lawyer. Everything you're about to say can be used against you if you push this further." The silence that followed was thick enough to drown in. Melissa wasn't there. She'd apparently stayed home with the kids. Typical. Daniel clenched his fists. "You're doing this to your own brother?" "No," I said evenly. "You did this to yourself." I turned to my parents. "I know about the inheritance too. The money Grandpa left me when I was 12, the money you said didn't exist. You gave it to Daniel. He blew it, just like everything else." Mom gasped, her hand trembling around her cup. "Who told you that?" "Aunt Rachel. And she showed me the paperwork." For once, my father didn't have an answer. He looked older, smaller. Daniel stood, his voice rising. "This is insane. You're just jealous." "Jealous?" I laughed softly. "Daniel, I worked every holiday, every weekend, every sleepless night to build something for myself. And all you've ever done is take, but that ends tonight." I pulled out one last document, the trust deed, and laid it flat on the table. "My home is legally protected now. You can't touch it. Not today, not ever. If you or anyone else tries, the law will handle it." He stared at the paper, shaking his head. "You're unbelievable." "I know," I said quietly. "It's the part you never saw coming." Dad tried to diffuse the tension. "Emily, please, let's not ruin the family over money." "It's not about money," I said, meeting his eyes. "It's about respect. You taught me that family means sacrifice, but you forgot that sacrifice has to go both ways." I stood up, gathering the papers. "You wanted to take my home. You already took my childhood, my inheritance, my peace. This is where I draw the line." Mom's eyes welled with tears. "Emily, we just wanted to help Daniel." "And you did," I said, my voice softening, "for 30 years. Now it's time to let him help himself." I left the table then, not storming out, not slamming doors, just walking away, calm, certain. Outside, the evening air smelled of rain and pine. The city lights shimmered off puddles on the sidewalk. I stopped for a second, breathing it in, the kind of air that feels clean after a storm. Behind me, through the restaurant's glass window, I could see them still sitting there, my parents whispering, Daniel hunched over, staring at the documents like they were written in another language. For the first time in my life, I wasn't part of their chaos. I was free.
A month passed before I heard from anyone in my family again. The silence was strange at first, like walking through a house where the furniture's been rearranged. I kept expecting my phone to buzz, to see Mom's name flash across the screen with another plea to fix this. But it didn't. The quiet, once unbearable, began to feel like peace. I poured my focus back into the clinic, into patients who thanked me just for listening, something my own family rarely did. I started running again before work, watching the sunrise spill across the Willamette River, and realized I was breathing easier. No more waiting for someone else's approval. No more explaining why my boundaries mattered. Aunt Rachel called one evening. "You did the right thing," she said. "Your grandfather would have been proud." Her words hit deep, because that's what I'd been chasing all along. Not revenge, not victory, just acknowledgement. I didn't need their praise anymore, but hearing someone finally see me felt like closing a wound that had been open for decades. Later that week, Linda dropped by to sign a few final trust documents. She stood by the window, smiling. "You know," she said, "most people in your position would have gone nuclear. Lawsuits, restraining orders. You handled it with grace." I laughed softly. Grace took practice. When she left, I walked out onto the porch. The evening air was cool, heavy with the scent of wet cedar. My garden had started blooming again. Roses, lavender, and a small patch of rosemary that somehow survived the winter. I knelt down, trimming a few leaves, and thought about all the times I'd sat in this spot crying, doubting, begging the universe to be fair. Maybe fairness doesn't come in the way we imagine. Maybe it comes in moments like this. Quiet, steady, unremarkable to anyone but you. A few weeks later, I heard through Aunt Rachel that my parents had finally confronted Daniel about the forged papers and the inheritance. It didn't go well. He'd been evicted from his apartment after defaulting on payments. Melissa left him, taking the kids to live with her sister in Idaho. For the first time, my parents saw what I'd been seeing for years. Not the charming son, but the manipulative man behind the charm. They cut him off financially. It hurt them, but it was necessary. Mom called me soon after. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail. "Emily, we're sorry for everything. I don't expect you to forgive us, but I hope one day you'll come home for dinner." I listened twice, maybe 3 times, then deleted it. Forgiveness, I realized, isn't a door you open for someone else. It's a window you open for yourself. And I wasn't quite ready yet. That night, I sat on the porch steps, wrapped in my yellow blanket, watching the sky turn violet. My house glowed softly behind me, warm light spilling through the windows, laughter from the neighbors drifting across the street. For once, the word alone didn't feel like punishment. It felt like freedom. I thought about all the people who'd been told, like me, that they were strong enough to handle being overlooked. To them, I'd say this: being strong doesn't mean carrying everyone else's weight until you collapse. It means knowing when to set it down. It means protecting what's yours, not out of selfishness, but self-respect. If you've ever had to guard your peace from the people you love most, tell me in the comments, because stories like ours matter. Sometimes justice isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's as quiet as sitting on your porch at dusk, knowing no one can take from you what you finally learned to protect. And in that quiet, you realize peace was the victory all along.